Hey creatives, welcome back to my channel. This is Sammy Says Create, and this is a channel that I do all sorts of DIY and creative projects, and I bring you along for the ride. Today's video is going to be a fun and summery DIY. I thought we could grab all that sun that we can get. We're going to make this really cute floaty swishy kimono out of this material like this. Woo! Awesome. Yeah, it's done. End of video, guys. No, I'm joking. Yeah, this is perfect for those days where it's nice and sunny outside, but you still want that little bit of cover up. Are you ready? Da-da-da! So, you know the drill by now. Let's roll those titles. So today I'm going to show you guys how to make a really easy DIY kimono for you to wear over your clothes in the summer. So for this kimono I have decided to use this material that I got hold of. So I've had this in my stash for quite a while. I've always intended it to be a kimono, so I'm quite excited to actually finally jump in and do it. So it's got that slippery kind of silky texture. It is quite thin. The good thing about it is it's really light, so you will get that kind of floaty effect at the bottom when it comes to making your kimono. So I definitely recommend trying to find a fabric that's like this. Don't go for anything too heavy. I really like your kind of crazy, bright, funky prints. Massive fan of like paisleys and stuff like that. And that's one of the reasons why I picked this one. So it's got a nice little nautical pattern to it, this one, which is quite cool. So there's a load of random things thrown in, to be fair. Hang on, is that, so there's an anchor there. But then there's like a carriage there, an anchor and a carriage, but then there's a wheel and some like nautical knots. So it's a bit of a mishmash, this pattern, but I like it. The only issues with sewing with this sort of material is it's very, very slippy, kind of has a mind of its own and can be quite difficult to sew sometimes. So I am not 100% sure this is going to come out really neat, but we will give it a go. It's really quite simple. It's minimal stitching that's needed, really. The main things that you're going to need in order to create this kimono is obviously your material. So a general rule, I think, a general gist of materials is if you want to make a clothing item of material and you're not sure on measurements, just go for 2 meters just to be extra safe. I tend to go for 3 because I'm a little bit curvier and more plus size, so I do know that obviously I might need a little bit more material than what's suggested. I've got some clips or pins. I've got a tape measure because I'm gonna, it's like the tiniest tape measure you've ever seen in your life. I also cut it in half by accident. So I'm just gonna use that to measure the length. Obviously your scissors, some matching thread and your sewing machine. I think that's the general gist of all you need, really. So I think that's all I need you to know before we get started, but I'm so excited to jump in with this. But let's get on with the video. So to begin with, I just took a rough measurement from shoulder to shoulder, just so I could keep an eye on the size of the kimono and how big it was, and just to make sure that it was going to fit me. Now, obviously kimonos are quite big and oversized, so I wasn't too worried about this, but I wanted to make sure I had this in mind. Then I measured from shoulder downwards, and this was for the length of the kimono. So most kimonos normally hit at round about hip length, so feel free to take your measurement there. However, I wanted it to be a full length kimono and I wanted it to pretty much hit the floor. So this is the basic of the shape that we're wanting to create. So with a rectangle of fabric, we're just going to be cutting out these smaller rectangles to give us the body and the arms. These are some general measurements that I found online, so these might not be applicable to everyone, but just use this to give you an idea of sizings and just tweak it accordingly based on the measurements that you took earlier on. So mine is going to come out a lot longer than this diagram and will be a little bit bigger in the middle, but that's absolutely fine. Just have a play around. If you're struggling with measurements and you need help working out measurements, just drop a comment in the comment sections down below and I can have a play around for you and see if we can work it out. Or just do what I did, fold your material in half and just kind of eyeball it. Just cut where you think your arms and your body need to be. Not the most professional, but live on the wild side, eh? So I folded my piece of material in half and just matched up the bottom edges, the folded edge being the top of the kimono. I then paid attention to where my sleeve was going to come down to. I then cut a straight line across the material, so towards the middle of the material. This is through both sides, and this is the length of the sleeve, so this is how long your sleeve is going to be. Then you're going to cut downwards in a straight line, so all the way down from where you've stopped, where that sleeve stops, all the way down to the bottom of the kimono. If you have a big table, this will be much easier, or possibly even do it on the floor. Then you're simply just going to repeat the process on the other side, so you'll end up with 2 arms. Again, just to reiterate, make sure that the folded edge of the material is the top of the kimono. So I understand this is not the easiest thing to follow on this tiny little table, but this is what we are looking like so far. The folded edge of the material is at the top, and with the floaty arms we now have something that resembles a kimono. So the next step is literally just to sew these bits together. So pretty much where we've cut, we're going to sew across them to secure them together. So just fold your kimono the wrong way around so that it's inside out basically, and then what you're going to do is you're going to lay it out and just take the bottom of the arms here, so where we've cut, take the bottom of the arms and either clip or pin these together. Obviously with this being a really slidey material, it's really important you make sure you pin it quite securely so that it will sew properly when we pop it through the sewing machine. Then just secure the bottom of these sleeves with a straight stitch. If you have an overlocker or serger, I recommend you use that, but if not, just use a zigzag stitch across the edge just to stop any fraying. So I went on to do this with all of my inside seams, just as this material was fraying quite a lot. Then I clipped both of the outside edges of the body of the kimono together, and I just proceeded to do a long straight stitch again down both sides just to secure the body in place. Once you're all sewn up, take the front of the kimono and do one nice big long slit all the way from top to bottom, just making sure it's really even and really central. This is the kimono at the moment. So we have our sleeves. So if you want to leave your kimono here like this, that is absolutely fine. There's a couple of things that I'm going to go on to do. You'll notice that I did cut it a little bit too small. It's a little bit scissor heavy, which I kind of did notice earlier on, but to be fair, with it being like a throw over, it doesn't actually matter that it kind of doesn't come all the way around. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to add some extra little panels at the front here just to give the bottom a little bit more poof. I'm also going to go around and hem it, I think, as well, but again, if you don't want to do that, you don't need to do that at all. So here I'm just adding a diagonal neckline into the front of the kimono. And then I went round and did a double rolled hem on all of the raw edges apart from the sleeves. So this again is personal preference. If you don't want to do it, then you don't need to. But all of the edges I folded down and I folded down again. So there's 2 little folds, and then I just sewed it all down just to make the edges really, really nice and neat. So I'm not going to go into too much detail about what I'm doing in these next couple of steps, because if you do it right and you follow the measurements or your measurements in the first place, then you won't need to extend it. It will fit perfectly fine. So, but what I am doing is just to add that bit of extra volume in the bottom, I'm taking the extra material that we cut out in the first step. So where we initially cut out those rectangles to make the body and the arms, I'm taking those spare rectangles, 2 of them, and I am going to sew them to the edge of the bottom of the kimono, and that way it will just give me a bit more extension and a bit more length. So I'll just kind of speed this process up so you can have a little bit of a look at what I'm doing. But if you want to know specifically what I'm doing, then just drop me a comment and I can explain it in a little bit more detail. I just don't want to bore all of you with too much information when you'll probably do it right in the first place. So these bits at the front here were those extra panels, okay? So it was a rectangle. I sewed the longest side of the rectangle just to the side of the kimono, and then I folded that down and just trimmed it so it was more of a triangle instead of that full rectangle. So that is what you've just seen me do. Then I just trimmed and hemmed the bottom of the kimono so that it was all nice and straight and neat. And a slight last minute decision, but I decided to make a belt just to finish off the look. I grabbed the other 2 scraps that we cut out earlier on and I stitched them together to make one really, really long piece of scrap. I then laid it all out and I folded both edges into the middle. Okay, so I knew I wanted this to be quite thick, so I wasn't too worried about the extra material, but both of the edges fold into the middle of the material, and then that whole thing gets folded in half again. So I'll just leave this here for you to watch. I hope it makes sense for you. Then clip it or pin it into place so it's secure for when you sew it. And when you get to the ends, fold the ends in so that it's a bit of a neater edge. Then using a straight stitch, just sew up those 3 sides that are open, so the longer side and the 2 shorter edges. And there is our completed belt. So that is the final step that I took to make my kimono. Yeah, I thought the initial stages were pretty easy. If I'd paid attention to my measurements in the first place, it would have been a lot easier. So the only thing I would recommend is just when you're cutting in those arms right at the start, so you're doing that cut for those arms, just pay attention to how big that is then making the body side of the kimono. So that's the one thing I completely forgot to check. I was cutting the arms to the length that I wanted and I ended up that the body was a bit too small. So just make sure you pay attention to that. But other than that, it's all been pretty easy. So there we go, a fabulous fun and floaty kimono, especially for the summer. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was relatively easy to understand. It was a lot of fun making this and I have been planning it for so long, so I'm so excited and I'm just really excited with the outcome. I think it looks so nice. If you have enjoyed today's video, please do show me some love and hit those thumbs up down below. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and hit that notification bell to get a notification every time I upload a new video. Don't forget you can follow me on Instagram during the week to keep up with all my crafty creations. Until the next video, keep creative. Bye!